Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Play the Tape. My name is Derek J. Fields. I am your host. Full disclaimer for everything. Play the Tape. We are not licensed or certified mental health specialists or drug and alcohol counselors. What Play the Tape is a platform of advocacy, love, support, and community when it comes to mental health, substance use, and recovery. That's what we're here for Play the Tape. But my guest today is my brother, my Oxford brother, someone that I've gotten really close with. And I love his journey and his story. And I asked my brother to be up here today to share his experience, strength, and hope with the rest of y'all. So without further ado, my brother, Brad P. How you doing today?
Good morning. Hey, I'm Brad. My sober date is January 25th of 2021. I live in Williamsburg, Virginia. I moved here from Illinois 2.5 years ago. I have been sober ever since. I now live in an Oxford house. I started out in the Evolution House, which is started out as a sober house. Now they're a privately funded. They opened up a treatment center and they help a lot of people in AA. There's a whole group of us alumni that have really had a glow up since we lived there. And there's some of the original people that came through. There's about 5 or 6 of us that have stayed sober the whole time. After we had came out of there, a lot of people some of them are running their own businesses now. Some of them are managers at stores. Our lives have really changed since coming into the Evolution House, which really helped me in the beginning. I since transitioned into an Oxford house, which is where I reside now. So yeah, I have a sponsor. He has a sponsor, and I attend meetings regularly, which is really important for my mental health, and also really important to just remind me that addiction is a dangerous, it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing we deal with every day. I have to remind myself it's an everyday thing for me to reset, recenter, and keep my thoughts on recovery and keep, some of the stress from the outside world out of my thoughts. Another really important thing for me is not taking my will back.
What do you mean by not taking your will back?
Not taking my will back means, so if I was to take my will back, that is basically me saying, I don't need recovery. I don't need meetings. I don't need fellowship. I don't need community. And me saying, I got this. I can do it all by myself, which I know, and I've come to find out through battling with alcohol and addiction, that that is definitely not the answer. And it's easy to get caught up in everyday life and want to live a normal life and begin to take my will back. So what that looks like is just imposing my will, like at work, maybe saying at work, I want things to go my way,
Mm-hmm.
and forcing that on my employer, or saying I don't need recovery and I can do this on my own, and trying to force the outcome. A lot of the outcome I've given it my will now, so I rely on God a lot for my outcome. I mean, I have to put in the work, but I rely on the fact that no matter what, if I stay sober, that God's got my back. So,
You said in the beginning you're from Illinois, and you explain how you went from Illinois to the Evo House. What led up to the Evolution House, and then in the transition again, we'll talk about Oxford later on in your interview. But take us back to the beginning stages of your alcohol and addiction, and how did you transition to Evolution? How did you find yourself there with all that success that you mentioned before?
okay. Yeah. So as far back as I remember,
Mm-hmm.
been alcohol and drug use in my family. I seen it in my father. I seen, some with my stepdad, not as much, but I've seen it from my brothers. I was really into art and music, and some people think like the subculture of that is having to do drugs or do alcohol. So that played a part. I was definitely influenced by some of the older kids and people in my community. So what really led up to my current situation, well, let me just go back to the beginning, Benny. My mom moved from a farm and moved smack dab in the middle of the ghetto. Um, and so she kind of put some struggle on herself right away to begin with. And that boiled over into our lives. The trauma of her being with certain husbands and some of the abuse and stuff we seen built trauma in our life. So growing up, we fought a lot. Violence was regular in our household. We used our hands, to express ourselves towards siblings. There was a lot of fights. So there was some trauma of generational trauma that boiled down from my mom that had come to us. And so we didn't really have the best upbringing. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't the best environment for a child. And so just going through some of that trauma, it was a lot easier to I was really susceptible to drug and alcohol use. Like a lot of the older peers I was around was doing it. There wasn't that many role models who were living a sober life and doing really much anything with their life outside of drinking and partying. Um, so we grew up kind of rough. We fought, and me and my brothers and sisters, me and my brothers wrestled, and I played some sports. I ran track, I wrestled. Um, right around the time I was in high school, I was getting ready to try out for the football team, and my family had a massive loss. My brother had a rare kidney disease, and he was 1 in 5 in the whole world in 1993. So his disease it wasn't untreatable, but there was a lot of experimenting going on. Doctors flew him all over the country to kind of find out his diagnosis and stuff, and eventually he lost his battle with that. Right around the time I think I was 17, turning 18, right around the time I was getting ready to graduate high school.
Mm-hmm.
That left a big hole in my family. And we were all devastated. My whole family was devastated. My grandma, who is the backbone of our family, had passed away 2 months earlier from her struggles with diabetes and being overweight and stuff. And so my whole family was just rocked by those two deaths in the family. And at that point, I really stopped playing sports and really caring about anything, honestly, positive. I was just kind of jaded. I lost my faith in God, and I turned to drugs and alcohol, and the I turned to my friends in the street who really weren't. I just wanted to numb whatever feelings I had. So I turned to drugs and alcohol, and that was my friends in the street who were doing that. So,
Was there anyone that you could talk to at that time before the turn to the alcohol and the drugs in the street? Was there anyone that you could reach out to be like, hey, I'm feeling a kind of way right now. I'm kind of hurt. I'm kind of lost. There's been a lot of trauma, a lot of death that I'm seeing, and I need someone to talk to. Was that ever there?
not really. There
Okay.
was some teachers and stuff that really cared about me, and I didn't know really how to open up about that stuff without putting my mom and my stepfather in like jeopardizing them taking care of us, and the state stepping in. That's
Right.
what I was scared of, is the state stepping in and saying,
Right.
hey, you're not taking care of your child right, and me having to go live with the state. And when I was young, I had to live with the state because my stepfather was partially abusive to us siblings, more so my mom, but we caught some of it too. So I think maybe I was just scared to open up and talk to people about that. There was really no one that, the teachers had expressed their care and stuff, but they didn't step in and say, hey, do you need like this type of help? I don't know how far they
Mm,
that stuff. And there, there's guidance counselors and stuff, but I don't know, I was already a teenager and stubborn, and like I had all this pride and ego.
Right.
And so for me to go and say, hey, I need help really wasn't a thing. You know, we were taught when I was young, you man the fuck up and deal with these situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that was that was the tone of what was happening then. Back then,
Hmm.
this was in late 90s, early 2000s. There wasn't a lot of people looking into the self-care or people really opening. That's just happened a lot in the last 10 years. People opening up and saying, hey man, it's not a problem. Like I need help. That really wasn't the vibe back then, like you kind of held in your emotions and dealt with it. You're taught to be tough and really not speak about all that with other men or stuff like that. Like that was the culture back then. There really wasn't that much recovery in my area in the rural Midwest. I had seen, I knew there was alcohol and drug counseling meetings and stuff that people went to for court, but I didn't know it was like a thing that you could do if you weren't, court ordered. There wasn't. Now to this day, there's only a handful of meetings in my little town that I grew up in. There's a town of 10,000, and it's still kind of the same thing there. Like people they fight their problems and their addiction and everything on their own. They're really quiet about it. To open up about that is like blasphemy. It's coming out and saying, I can't handle my life. I can't handle, that's not really a thing that people really do in the Midwest, right?
Hmm.
Without having met someone in recovery and been guided to the point of like, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to have problems. And a lot of people that do it back home are court ordered. So it would have been really, um, I think maybe just fear of like being moved out of my house or, being taken away from my family. Some of that probably was in the back of my mind. There's people that helped and honestly was self-medicating with marijuana and alcohol. My escape from all that was just movies or my BMX bike. Like, my activities, I would go hard on those. And after my brother died, I kind of lost my way with a lot of things. And my addiction and my recovery, to deal with a lot of that trauma, I started fighting people. And so a lot of my anger, I would take out on people who would come at me. A lot of people, I'm mixed, and there's not really many mixed people back home where I live. I think there's
Trying to get his internet together. That's fine. Things happen. Brad, you still there? There we go.
yeah,
There we
just
go.
like, there wasn't too many mixed families, so there was some racial stuff where people kind of picked on me, and when that would happen, I would just fight people a lot. I had been in a lot of fights, not many that I really started, but I really wasn't willing to let some of this stuff slide. There was a lot of pride and ego, and I got into a lot of trouble fighting on an early age, and that's kind of how I dealt with it. Um, Looking back now, man, all of this stuff was so unhealthy. Being violent and stuff that was just so unnecessary. I can't tell you how many dollars I've spent on lawyers and staying out of jail, and so um, it continued on like that after high school into my 20s, and then my drug use just became, it got worse and worse. I slipped over and started using more heavier, serious drugs. A lot of my friends were now starting to go to jail, and some of them had went to prison. My brother had went to prison. Um, I had been seeing there was a lot of turmoil and stuff coming. This is, a couple years around that time, a lot of friends were dying from car accidents, which, were stemming from alcohol, country cruising, and just being wasted and drinking and driving. There's a handful of people that had died from drug use. Um, and so it was a really chaotic and crazy time. right after high school, and I really self-medicated through a lot of that. And a lot of it, my parents were on the right track. They had stopped using drugs and alcohol and really stopped partying. They were on the right track, but I'm really kind of noticing that now that
Mm-hmm.
they had moved away from their violent past and all this stuff, and they were starting to heal, and they were wanting me, they're telling me this is what you do, this is, this, you need to do this and stick to your job, and like all this stuff's important. But I really wasn't trying to hear that at the point in time, because I'm like, this, you guys used to fight and do all this stuff and throwing all this past trauma at them whenever they were trying to help me,
Mm-hmm.
in their face. And just being unruly. It was just anarchy and chaos, and most of it was fear. And I knew, at some point of me, knew I needed to get a hold of myself. My friends were working jobs; they had full-time jobs and cars, and I couldn't keep a job or didn't have a vehicle. Couldn't get myself together. A lot of my friends were in college, and I would go visit them to college parties, and I just got completely wasted and made an ass out of myself a lot. Looking back, I had a lot of fun years doing that, but it caused me a lot of damage. Looking back, there's a lot of damage, a lot of fines. There's a lot of holidays I spent in jail, a lot of holiday time, a lot of birthdays, a lot of stuff that I missed. And so I went on like that for a good 10 years. And I had been through the psych ward a few times, so I met some counselors, and they're like, "Man, you're such a good kid. You need to, figure it out to get yourself on a better track." And so I had started some of the thought process of like, "Man, I really do need to tighten up and get my, can get control of my life back." It always was in the back of my head, like, "You're
Mm-hmm.
better than this. This isn't like you. You're, you're living through this anger and all of the stuff that you really need to let go," but I didn't know how to let go. So I ended up, this went on for years and years, and I had failed relationships, and I am thankful I never had a child when I was, in these chaotic years. And then it kind of calmed down nearing the end of my 20s into my 30s. I had a child. Um, that really changed a lot of my outlook and perspective on life. I'm like, man, I really need to get it together, because I'm like, I'm going to end up like my father and not be there for my son. And it's like, is this what I want for myself? So this is some thoughts that were started, these thoughts were brewing.
Where were you when these thoughts started to happen? What part? Where were you in your life? Where were you geographically? Where were you mentally, emotionally? Where was Brad when these thoughts started to happen? Like, I'm hearing that voice, like, I can do better. I want to be better. I don't want to be like my dad. I want to raise my child the best way I can. Where were you when this started to happen?
So my buddy owned a roofing business that we had started after high school. We did some stuff for his uncle, and a bunch of us moved to Springfield, Illinois. So we all lived in a house. There's like 4 or 5 of us, but there was me, Luke, and my brother were the main ones, and we kind of were like the constant people at that house. It was like a flop house. We all worked together. We all came home, showered, drinking, and partying. So I was in Springfield, Illinois. I had since moved out of that house. I was living with my baby mom, um, and she did not have the alcoholic gene. She was
Hmm.
fine with drinking. She could handle herself, and it was totally different than what I was going through. But yeah, I was in Springfield. I was probably around the age of 31, 32. Um, I was working, but every weekend, was like, man, right when the weekend hit, I was like, party time. And I would have my son every other weekend. And then the weekends I didn't have him. It was just party time. So I was in Springfield. I was nearing the end of my 30s, or my 20s into my 30s. I was really in a bad spot mentally. I knew that like I needed some kind of, I didn't know it was recovery that I needed, but I knew I needed some kind of change in my life. Um, and these thoughts had brewed because I would have these big fights with my brother and friends. Like I would be fine for a while. I could go for a year, maybe 6 months. I'd be fine, and then something would happen. I would get into a fight with someone, end up in jail, and I'm like, man, I need to really do something. But when it really dawned on me is when I was living with my baby mom. I had my son, and she was going through some stuff at her school, kind of like some harassment stuff. She was a admissions rep at the school, and they had fired her. So I was like at this dead end job where everybody around me was using Suboxone, they were using meth. I mean, and this was like when I would get to work. Like when I would get to work at 6, 7 in the morning is when on the ride to the job is like when they were using, and that was like the moment where I was like, man, this is like really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Really need to make a change and get out of this environment. Like this isn't what I want for myself. This isn't what I want for my son. This is like such a bad environment. If we would have been pulled over at any time, I could have been implicated on charges, drug charges. Even if it wasn't my stuff, I was there. I was in the vehicle. There could have been charges brought up. So then me and my baby mom, Teresa, we had fought about that a lot. It was like me drinking and my drug use, but I was trapped in this construction. So I worked construction, and that was like what I was doing at the time was carpentry. So I was trapped in this culture of like go to work, drink after work, drink on the weekends, and like it was acceptable to the construction field. You know, that was like you show up a little bit hungover, like no one really cared as long as you're doing your job. And Teresa worked actually at a place called Fifth Street Renaissance in Springfield, Illinois, where she was helping people in the community overcome some of this stuff. So she was like working actively, helping people do this. And it was like
Mm-hmm.
of interest for me to go get help from her place. But I was seeing the help that people were getting from the meetings and stuff. So it was around that time when I had attended a few meetings with my cousin, kind of just to keep him company. And I really didn't have no intentions of it being serious for me. Because I had kept telling myself, oh, I don't have this problem. Like, this is something I can handle on my own. And I did for a while. Eventually, in 2017, I had got a third DUI. And part of the thing, my lawyer had set something up where he wanted me to they were going to put me on probation for 3 years. And I was like, man, I really need, I could sit down.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about that with my mom and my baby mom. I was like, maybe I need to go sit down and experience prison because I've been getting in trouble for so long, but not actually having to go to prison and experience what that's like. And so I asked my probation officer, hey man, what, I asked my lawyer, I was like, how many months would I do if I just took the charge and went to prison? And he said 6 months. I ended up going to do that at the last minute, and I went to prison. That's the choice I made, and I ended up going for 9 months. And it was really an eye opener, being locked up, being alone, not having. I had a few visits and a few letters, but man, you're alone in there with your thoughts, and it was really bad. It was really humbling. A lot of good came from it, but it was really a bad place to be mentally, physically. Exercise was one thing that got me through that. And luckily I just know how to navigate institutions like that. Like I just, I stayed to myself. I didn't really mess with too many people. I kept my head on what my goal is, and that's getting out, staying away from violence, because you can really get wrapped up in some stuff if you're not careful.
Right.
So when I got out of there, I went to a homeless shelter, and that was for a month and a half. The third day I got a job doing construction. I was doing really good. After a month and a half, I had got my own apartment on the nice side of town, had a room for my son, and was starting to get my son again. And I was using marijuana at the time. My drinking was minimal. And I'm just telling myself this was all right. So then my boss was showing signs of like drug use, and he had been away from the drugs. So even though I was doing good, there was a thin line between me staying where I was at and me slipping back into my old behavior. And I didn't think the drinking or the marijuana use or anything was a problem. I got off parole successfully. But the whole time I was faking the process. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
taking drinks to pass piss tests, telling my probation officer I can't piss this time. I was like making up excuses and skating by the freaking thin hairs on my head. Um, and somehow that worked for that time. And my boss was showing signs of drug use, and he had come to work and was just more and more aggressive. And I'm like, this guy was so nice before. There's something happening. And so that situation kind of blew up. He was wanting us to do stuff that was like really dangerous for us and being up on these high buildings without being tied off. And I'm like, man, I really didn't, this isn't something I signed up for. So we had a falling out, and then that created just an opening. And my girlfriend at the time, it was a really toxic relationship, a lot of fighting and arguing. She was like, why don't you move in my house? And I had moved in there, and all we did was fight, because the insecurities, a lot of fear of me not wanting to stop drinking, a lot of extra, outside stuff, women coming into my my inbox, my DMs and stuff, just like unhealthy stuff for a relationship. And I wasn't being an adult about the situation. I really wasn't ready for this relationship that I thought I was, and I took that responsibility. But when ultimately I wasn't ready for this, and I put it on myself too fast, and that blew up. So I had moved back in with my brother, where there was just like a lot of active addiction and alcohol use, around again. And I had moved out of Springfield, and then I moved back to Springfield with my brother, and it was like a flop house. The same stuff that I had went through before: loud music till 3 a.m, fights happening in the next room, me waking up out of bed, going out there and getting into these fights with people I barely knew. My brother, towards the end, so we were living together, my plan was to move out. And so he was being extra hard on me because he thought that would help motivate me moving out. And one thing was like, I didn't mind doing the dishes. This is kind of some of what blew up the situation. So he's like, you do the dishes. And I'm like, that's fine, like 3 or 4 days a week. But he wanted me to do the dishes 99% of the time. He would make these big meals, leave this mess, and we would fight about it. And then that's really the only thing we fought about, was that drugs, the last of the drugs. Like, oh, I gave you some drugs yesterday, you don't want to share with me today, stuff like that. And that's really bad when you get to that point. You're like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm crumbs with these other guys. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it came to: sitting in a room, isolated, just a few couple people staring at each other and just using drugs. It was not fun anymore at that point. So my brother come home drunk from work one day, was like, do these dishes. And I was like, dude, I'm good, man. You already said my son can't visit this weekend, that you have a party going on. I'm like, why would I do the dishes so you can like have this party, bro? And that's insane to me. It's not gonna happen. And he was like, basically, like, you can do the dishes or you can get the F out. So I was like, who's gonna put me out, bro? Is it gonna be you? And I was like, if you want to fight, bro, like, I'm gonna go hard on you, bro, because you put me in a situation right now where my heart is like so heavy on how you've been treating me. Like, I just don't care. Like, I'm gonna go ham on you if we fight. And he come back. He left the house for like 30 minutes and came back with the cops. And I was like, what, bro? Like, you call the cops on me because you threatened to fight me? And so a few of my friends had seen like this stuff on my Facebook. My posts are getting worse and worse. My pictures of like party with these random people. And they called me and they're like, what are you doing with yourself, man? Like, what's going on over there, bro? Like, where is Brad Powell? Like, the Brad Powell we knew, that we graduated high school with, that we thought would like move on and do bigger, better things. And I'm like, bro, I have no idea where that person is. And I had some long talks with a couple friends that really were really important in my life. My friend Zach Clark in Texas, my friend Joey Ryan out here in Virginia. And Joey had told me about him going through a sober house and I seen him, he was managing this pizza place. He was doing really good. He had a vehicle. He was clean. His clothes were new. Like, he was really getting himself together. Joey now has coming up on 4 years, I believe, if not.
Awesome. Awesome.
And he was like, I get on the phone, man. I got these people that run a sober house. You should talk to them and see if you qualify. So I got on the phone told him this story, and I broke down and started crying because at that point I had hit my bottom, my rock bottom, and I was really ready to make a change in my life. Like I felt that with all of my core. I didn't know how to do it with power bills and all these different bills that were stacked up. Like I couldn't move to a new apartment and do it that way. So I really needed some outside help. I'm like, how do I move out of my situation? How do I move out of a trap house in the middle of the hood where everyone's using drugs at all times of the day and night to someplace secure, someplace where I feel comfortable and I don't have my guard up and I'm not worried about violence all the time. And so I got out here, got a hold of them on the phone, had a real long talk, moved to Virginia into a sober house, did 90 meetings in 90 days, got a sponsor, started working the steps. I'm still not done working the steps. That's like something I've been working on continuously. But even now, I'm not required to go to meetings. I do that on my own accord. I at least go to 2, 3 meetings a week. My friends now have changed from alcoholics and drug addicts to people in recovery, people that are in the church community, people that have goals in their life, people that actually want to see me doing good, people that have guidance on how to do better. These are the people I surround myself with now. It's just so important. It's just surrounding yourself with like-minded people that have your best interest in mind. I had a lot of fair weather friends, that I thought were really good friends. There's a handful of friends I still talk to from home, but a lot of them I didn't. I was using and drinking with them, and when I started getting sober, those people kind of just slipped away.
Right.
They didn't want to be, there wasn't a fun party no more. So we really didn't have nothing in common outside of that. And so then at that first sober house, I spent about 7 months, and that served its purpose. It was a really good community be in fellowship, and we had some really good the weekly meetings and stuff were really good. And I was like, I think I'm ready to move on to something a little bit different. And that was Oxford House. So I had moved out to Oxford House. I've been here for 2.5 years. So 7 months of that I lived in Evolution House, and the rest I've lived in Oxford, just doing service for Oxford House, service work in the community of AA and the meetings. A lot of stuff is like honey-do lists for people who are older, helping them rake in their yard, lay down mulch and stuff like that. But with these little jobs, sometimes I got paid, sometimes I didn't. But some of these little jobs, I got to hear these people who are in the recovery that are older, maybe 50s, 60s. I got to hear some of their story and, what they went through. And I got to really connect with them on a personal level, outside of the meetings and stuff. And through service work, being around them in their homes, they invited me into their homes. They fed me, really put a lot of trust in me. And that's like, man, wow, like this is a really great community to be a part of, to know that like these people could meet a stranger and show you this much love. These are the people I can call on now. Any day I can call them up and say, hey, man, I'm struggling with these ideas. Because if I have like some crazy thoughts, I like to run it by a few different people, which I was taught in the community of AA, and just say, hey, man, how does that sound? And usually times out of 10, they're gonna be like, dude, that sounds batshit crazy. Don't do that. Do not do that. Like you need to call someone else and get their opinion, and I will. And it's like, the popular opinion is like, bro, you're really in your head and you really are going through some wild thoughts. And like, how do you tame those wild thoughts? I go right back to the meetings and think about this and apply what I hear and learn in the meetings to my emotional distress and what I'm going through. And every time I go to a meeting, all the stress and everything just melts away, and I'm refreshed for the week. I'm rejuvenated, and I'm ready to take everything on with a new perspective and just look at things from a different angle, and most importantly is to look at my role in whatever I'm going through. I have to look and say, okay, is this, what's your role in this? 9 times out of 10, I'm imposing my will on something. I want things to go my way. I'm trying to force my way on everything around me instead of accepting God's will, being what will be happen. I can't control these things. And when I give up that fight and let the stuff around me happen as it should, as it's going to, everything goes really smoothly. And
You, I am very honored to hear your story. I'm very, because I've been around you and I've gotten small glimpses and snippets of your story, and to hear your story the way you told it, full transparency, being vulnerable, coming from your heart and your spirit and your soul. I got a question. Is there any part of you right now, the Brad I'm talking to, will let anything come and affect his recovery right now?
um no. I mean, the only thing I could think of that might falter my recovery right now is maybe like a death of a loved one. But I'm really solid right now. I mean, I can't say for sure if I will ever drink or use again. I mean, I know I have thoughts, fleeting thoughts every now and then of like alcohol and stuff. Um, at this point, I can't see myself going back to alcohol or drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't, I don't want to, I can't say for sure that that's never something that could happen.
Right. But you have a lot of different now, instead of going, that's your first initial thing, coping, you have a lot of tools, a lot of resources that you can call upon before you even pick up or even having to go there. You have a lot of things in place for yourself.
Right. Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, I just didn't want to say I'm good,
Right, right.
I'm healed, I'm cured. This is an everyday battle for me. I always have to check myself,
Mm-hmm.
up with my daily affirmations and stuff, and be like, okay, like I don't ever get a big head and say I'm okay, this is good, I'm recovered. So I can't really guarantee that I'll never go back out. But right now, I'm armed with the tools. I have people I can call that will rush over here and talk to me about this. I have people I can call and come pick me up. I have so many tools now that I don't see myself going back out anytime soon. I also, I'm working as a peer now, so I'm trying to work in recovery and stay in and around recovery people. That's really important for my recovery.
Weren't you going to school for that earlier?
Yes, I was. So now I'm done. I have a certificate and
Mm-hmm.
waiting on to take the test for the state, which I just now put the thing in. Um,
Yeah.
I just put the inquiry in, so like I'll get some paperwork back, and there'll be a time I set up a time to where I can take my state board, and after I get my state board certification, then I can bill as a contractor, and then it's like official. Uh,
Awesome, bro.
yeah,
Awesome, bro. Congratulations for that. And everything that you and your successes, even learning through your failures and your losses. I
yeah.
still want to say congratulations and a tip of the cap to you, bro. You're very inspiring. Your whole story.
I wouldn't change anything in the way that it's happened. I mean, some of the stuff that's happened has been like just like really emotional stuff, but honestly, it all led me to this one point, and that's like right now I feel great, man. My life is coming together. I'm working on my credit. I don't worry about work. It works good. I don't worry about any of that. Everything's coming together. My life feels full again. I have purpose within the recovery community. I stay active with church, as much as physically possible outside of work. And I feel really solid right now. I'm excited to see where recovery is going to take me in the future. Just even the meeting the people. Like I love,
Right.
people watching and hearing these stories, and I get to do all of that at a meeting. You get to hear these stories of other people and insight to their life, professionals, doctors, lawyers, dentists, and it really does something to you when you come to understand that you're not alone. There's people
Hmm.
of all walks of life that are affected by alcoholism and addiction. So um, it's
We
really
got,
a blessing.
yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you that. You seem like you are right now today, because it's for us, it is a day at a time. Sometimes it's a moment at a time, a minute at a time, where you just have to be like, okay, like you said, what role am I playing? Am I trying to take my will back? Am I trying to force things to happen? Let me just take a breath, take a moment, If I have resources, I need to use them. Pick up the phone, go to a meeting, read
Mhm.
some literature. We got 15 minutes. I wanted to talk about what is the process of, you talked about evolution, you talk about Oxford, and you're in Oxford now, and I've been in Oxford. What is that process of Oxford sober living home? Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. The process. So like we're I think level one.
Hmm.
I'm not too sure about some of the like more particular stuff, but just Oxford is a sober house, and you have to call and just ask if they have room, and then you basically have an interview, and after the interview, they the group in the house kind of decides. So it is um, a democracy,
Hmm.
the democratic process. So like we all vote on everything. There's no leader. Everybody votes on what happens in the house. Um, there's people that take leadership roles within the house. There's a comptroller, a treasurer, a president, a chore coordinator, and all these people help the process, but no one person governs. So everything is voted on. If you're accepted in, I mean, you have to fit the criteria. You have to, have been through some alcoholism or addiction and have a need to be here. It's not like a boarding house where you just move in for cheap rent. So if you have the need and you're a fit here, and we decide that in a meeting, um, and so once you do like, what's it called? So we sit in our meeting and you basically have an interview. And if you're accepted, you move in and you basically work a job, you pay rent, but the reason this works is you're held accountable to stay sober, accountable to do your chores, accountable to live like an adult. So everybody through that democratic process, once a week we say, hey man, how are you doing, like what's your progress, and have you did your chores, are you working, are you paying rent? And you basically, through living with these other people, kind of learn how to live as an adult again, because most people had been living so messed up that the basic needs they don't do, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I heard somebody tell me that their sponsor had told them, you shower once a day, make sure you brush your teeth twice a day. And I remember in active use, I didn't brush my teeth twice a day. Sometimes it'd be 3 days, like it only takes 48 hours for plaque to start building up on your teeth, which is really important. A lot of people, when they move in, they've kind of forgot this stuff of how to live, or maybe their family was never really living like that, but you're held accountable to basically do your daily chores and your basic stuff. And you have a house meeting once a week, you have a chapter meeting monthly, and you go over your dues and talk about all of that. Um, Part of the probationary period, you have to go to so many meetings and so many days. And that's designed because even if someone doesn't think they need recovery, there might be something inside of one of these meetings that's shared by somebody else that they hear, and it
That part.
just boom, like a light
Yeah.
off, and they're like, man, this is exactly where I belong. Hearing another person share their problems really does something to people inside, you know what I mean? It really opens them up to the thought of, I do have a problem and I am just like these other people. And that's the magic of the meetings, is hearing other people's story and identifying with their struggles, the turmoil they went through, all the stuff they went through. When you identify this stuff with your life and what you've went through, um, it really just says, it really just, then people kind of figure out, hey, I'm in the right place, I'm on the right path, this is like the right group for me. And eventually they open up. If they do eventually open up, something magical happens after a while, and then they figure out, man, this is great, like this is what I've needed. I have a sense of community, and they get to do and help people, and they start to open up. I've seen people come in and be really quiet, and then after a couple of meetings they open up more and more and more. And then I've seen people after a time of like 6 months to a year who are driving again. They have jobs, their clothes. You can tell by the way they dress, they're keeping themselves together. They're, they call you on the phone, they're doing service work, they're helping other people. So this process is magical in the way that it works. Cause I mean, really the only thing is just admitting you have a problem and
Hmm.
wanting to change. And if you can get past those first few steps, the first and the third step, admitting you have a problem, admitting you're powerless over, drugs and alcohol, and wanting to change. Once you open up and share that, and share your vulnerability with that, and open up to other people about that, and your mind's open to that idea of maybe I can't do this by myself. Something goes off inside of you, and you it doesn't matter if you don't want to change or you do want to change. Some of the stuff you can't take back, like you can't unhear it. Once you hear it, it sets off, boom, like, man, somebody
Yeah.
might hear something they didn't want to hear. I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. That voice is in the back of their head, even when they go back out and use or drink again. So some people, I've seen people come and go. Some people don't last that long. Some people tell themselves they're not worthy of living a good life. Some people are um, unwilling to open up and share their problems. Some people have problems that need to be addressed by a therapist, but the people who do, um, so the people who do open up and that are ready to make a change, I have seen just phenomenal changes in a year. Some of the people just living, a lot of these people didn't go through some big hospital experience and psych ward or whatever. Some people do, some people don't. Some people have failed marriages. Some people have jobs that they've lost. People come for all different reasons, but the outcome is still the same. If you show up, eventually you're going to have a glow up. And I've seen it happen to so many people. Their lives are just boom. It's just like this bomb goes off, and you're like, man, you see him, and you're like, what have you been doing to yourself? Like, you look really good. You look really good, and you can see the change in their eyes. You can see the change in their body language. You can see the change. Their guard, they let their guard down. They're getting their confidence back. You can see the change on people. It's like they're radiating this light, this glow, and it's a really magical thing.
I like how you say, well, if you show up at some point you'll glow up. I like that. I like that a lot. I see it in you. I see how you talk about it. I see when you talk about the change and the perspective of glowing up and showing up, and that's something that you will hear that will open up your mind and open up your senses to make a change. I see that. I can feel that. And I feel it from you, and I see it in you too. Real quick, how has your change? Do you see the change in yourself? Do you feel the change in yourself?
Some people see it more than me, but I feel it. Yeah,
Good.
definitely. When I come into a situation where I'm faced with adversity, um, I don't react as badly. Let's put it that way. I don't react as badly as I used to. Now I'm able to step out of the situation, think about it before I speak, and choose my reaction. As before, it was an automatic combative response. So um, yeah, I've definitely seen it in myself. My son, I mean, he's 7 years old. He's seen it. My mom has seen it. People just talking to me on the phone, old friends and people, they're like, I don't know if you know, but I can definitely hear some change. There's some education, some spiritual
Yeah,
education. I mean, I don't hear it as much as they do, but they're like, we can tell, and it's definitely a thing, and they're all rooting for me. Since coming into the rooms of AA and living sober, I've gotten a lot of relationships back,
good.
lost through miscommunication and discord. Um, I've apologized for some of the stuff that's happened, and those relationships of the good ones, they've returned, and now I have an open. Um, we talk a lot. I talk a lot with my mom, my sister, my family, my brother. A lot of my old friends that kind of stepped away from me because I was making a lot of bad choices when they had a family and stuff to worry about. They weren't worried about what I was doing, but yeah, man, since a lot has changed, I feel good. You know what I mean? That's my mental health is getting better daily, and I'm not even finished. I haven't even this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. I plan to, my emotional recovery is going to keep going. This
Hmm.
path, this journey I'm on, my emotional recovery is that's something that I will continue even after Oxford House, even after the meetings and stuff. Now I wake up and I read some literature. It might not be every day, but there's days when I wake up, read literature. Um, I know how to set my week up for success now. Meal prep, get some reading in, just set up a few tasks for me to do during the week, get my schedule right, plan a few meetings, and I stick to this plan. And through the week, it's so easy, just to in taking on that one on like my day off, do a little meal prep, kind of reflect on the week ahead. What am I going to do for this week? And then sticking to that plan, following that plan, it prepares me to not really have to worry about it through the week because I've already made this decision. All I really have to do is wake up and make a decision to stick to my plan that I've already set in motion. I've already did some work that one day a week. I do a meal prep, get my laundry done, get everything done before the week. And then when the week comes, I have time to go to meetings. I have time to go to movies. I have time to call people on the phone. I have time to hang out with people. I have time to go exercise. I have time to go do some outside activities, play pickleball, ride my bike, different things. Not all, I don't fit this all one weekend or one week, but I have time now. And most importantly, I'm calm enough and I'm relaxed enough to think about the things. What do I want to do? What do I want to do next week with my free time? What do I want to do 2 weeks from now? I can make plans with friends and I'm able to show up to these plans. And
Hmm.
people count on me to be there for stuff. When I make a commitment, I honor my commitments now. And people look for me. Hey, man, we know you're going to be there. And it's never, as long as I'm sober, this community is where I'm going to be, you know?
Yeah, I do. And listen, I want to say thank you again, my brother, for your story, your testimony, your words of encouragement, your experience, strength, and hope, and everything that you said. I've gotten to know Brad a little bit better, and I can't wait to have you back to see where you are
Yeah, man.
next. You know what I mean? Yeah, from now to the next time I have you on the show, because you're going to be a recurring guest on my show because your story is powerful, and there's a lot of other things I want to touch on.
Yeah,
Um, like your relationships with your mom and your friends and your brother and different avenues of sponsorship and service work. I want you next time you come up here, you can elaborate on those things and what Brad does.
definitely.
Absolutely. To keep
Yeah, man.
Brad.
Thanks for having me, man. It's really been a blessing to have me on here. I love sharing my story and being able to help other people
And
through my experience, strength, and hope, man. So thanks for,
absolutely.
I look forward to the future.
Yeah, me too, bro. And look, much success to you. I love you, bro. Blessings to you and peace, King, because that's what you are. And I'll catch you next time. Okay.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Love you, bro. Hey, so listen. If no one's told you today that they love you, we love you. I love you. That's what we do here at Play the Tape. As you heard Brad say in his testimony, how he talks things out to people that he trusts, and they tell him yay or nay. They tell him that's a good idea or that's absurd. That's what Play the Tape is. We're here. We're a community of advocacy, support, and love. To have peace comes understanding. And with understanding comes love. And with love comes faith. And with faith comes hope. And with hope comes recovery. I love you. We love you. Until next time, this is Play the Tape. I am your host, Derek J. Fields. Peace.